Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kausik Rajgopal, Director at McKinsey & Company, and Bruno, Principal and Co-Leader, America's Payments Practice, McKinsey & Company.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be back again at Money 2020. Thanks to Anil, Jonathan, and the Money 2020 team for having us. And it's a privilege to address such a distinguished audience. We are midway through what may well be the most consequential decade in payments in our lifetimes. And these 6 themes that we highlighted in the video that are the themes for this conference are leading the way for Money 2020. They're not just transforming payments, but also retail, loyalty, and marketing as all of these converge. But these themes are also accelerating because there are 4 underlying forces at work that are reinforcing each other in new and different ways. The first is technology advances that are pushing the envelope on what is the art of the possible. The second is an accelerated shift in consumer behavior, a rising willingness on the part of consumers to adopt, experiment, and use new and different ways to pay. The third is regulatory shifts, particularly around risk management and compliance in a new normal after the financial crisis. And the fourth is a competitive evolution where historically traditional payments players and non-traditional players are partnering, creating and forging strategic alliances, and also pursuing new acquisitions. To get us started and to have a little bit of fun, we thought we'd highlight 3 of these themes and ask and answer a few questions about them. So to get us going, Phil, what do these people have to do with payments?
Well, Kausik, these people don't actually look very much like folks in the audience here, but they've had a very large role in payments over the last year or 2. So for a couple of options, were they all up for modeling contracts? I don't think so. Were they part of TMZ's morning blotter? Were they partying with Lindsay Lohan at the hotel last night? I doubt it. Were they turn downs for Silicon Valley, the payments edition? Well, possibly. Or were they hackers involved with the recent data breaches? I think this one's pretty obvious. What we see over the last 7 years is that cybercrime has increased over 600%. And the pace of that increase is accelerating, with cybercrimes growing at 10x the rate of physical crime just over the last year. As we look forward, the industry is actually rising to the occasion. We have issuers, acquirers, networks, and merchants all coming together to work and try and increase the pace of adoption of 3 technologies to combat fraud. And those are EMV, tokenization, and encryption. And these 3 technologies are aimed to work together to try and reduce the fraud in the system, and they're trying to protect consumer information and, where possible, eliminate it altogether. And I think one of the more interesting things that we saw out of the Apple Pay announcement was tokenization, where the consumer account information has just been eliminated from the transaction altogether.
And tokenization is also an example of new and different alliances reshaping the payments landscape. It enables any large player with a significant amount of stored payments credentials to become a digital wallet.
So Kausik, back to you. What do these comments have to do with payments?
Well, this one's pretty interesting because there appears to be a wide range of opinion. Bill Gates thinks it's a technological tour de force. Charlie Munger is considerably less complimentary. And Jeremy thinks that the potential for disruption is enormous. Are they talking about digital lotteries coming soon to a screen near you, mobile wallets, which we just discussed, the new website Payment Starter, which is a payments version of Kickstarter dedicated to funding payment startups, or Bitcoin? And the answer, of course, is Bitcoin. It feels like everyone needs to have a pithy one-liner about Bitcoin. So do we. It's not the coin, it's the bit. What do we mean by that? Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies and their associated underlying technologies, we believe, have 4 potential applications. The first, which seems to grab a lot of the headlines, is as a currency. Currencies are fundamentally mediums of exchange, a way to pay for goods and services. The other application is as a store of value. And you can be a store of value without being a currency. Think about gold, not widely used as a currency, still widely used as a store of value. The third application could be as a transaction protocol, a way to clear and settle transactions. And the fourth application could be as a basis for digital records. If we consider the first use case as a currency or as a medium of exchange, every day there's a new headline that a new merchant is accepting Bitcoin. And I think we are now at about 30,000 and counting. But history tells us that merchant acceptance is necessary but not sufficient for the success of any new payments mechanism or currency. Crypto or otherwise, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are no exception to that. The principal factor that drives the success of any new currency or payments mechanism is consumer adoption and usage. And on this score, Bitcoin and associated cryptocurrencies have a long way to go before becoming an at-scale medium of exchange and a viable currency. There are challenges of liquidity, supply, access, distribution, and regulation. And they ultimately need to get to a point where, in order to be successful as a currency, they need to not just offer a marginally better proposition to consumers as a payment mode, but something that is a step function better. We believe that those challenges are significant. Similarly, as a store of value, there are challenges to face and overcome, and in particular on the regulatory front. However, we think that there is significant potential for the associated underlying technologies. If we think about the blockchain, for example, that stores the history of all Bitcoin or other transactions, to serve as a transaction protocol, a more efficient way to clear and settle, to move money. And finally, as a digital record, to serve as a single source of truth, digitally, not paper-based, for transactions involving financial assets in particular. So we think there is a long way to go on cryptocurrencies, but the outlook for them as transaction protocols and digital records have significant long-term potential. And as the final question, we thought we'd focus a little bit on e-commerce. E-commerce this year crossed the $1 trillion mark in payment volumes, a milestone for something that started only about 17 years ago. And when we look at e-commerce, there is one sector of e-commerce that is the fastest growing, the most complex, and the most profitable. That sector is cross-border commerce. So Phil, when you look at cross-border commerce, what is the fastest growing sector?
Yeah, so let's see. Is it electronics, which are compact and easy to ship? Is it B, drugs, the legal kind? C, jewels and gemstones? D, weaponry, even the warlords have found out about the internet? Or E, automobiles? It's actually a trick question. It's baby products which are sold cross-border to Chinese consumers. Affluent and middle-income Chinese consumers are increasing their e-commerce reach and importing more and more goods by the day. If we look forward, today, Chinese cross-border e-commerce is almost as large as the US, but growing at more than twice the rate. And in 5 years, we expect that to be nearly double the rate of US consumer cross-border e-commerce. When we look forward in 2018, we see about 150 million consumers conducting $300 billion in transactions for cross-border e-commerce. Now, that's pretty exciting for us payments folks in the room, because the cross-border e-commerce is the fastest growing and highest margin part of the e-commerce business. So Kausik, back to you.
So we've talked briefly and hopefully given you a bit of an appetizer to start thinking about 3 of the 6 payment themes that characterize the conference. While these are just words on a slide, we know that all of you live these themes every day. And in many ways, the real shapers of the future of payments are all of you in the audience. So we hope you enjoy the opportunity to connect, to forge new alliances and partnerships, and help move us forward towards Money 2020. Thank you.
Enjoy the conference, everyone.